When Emily came through the door that night, I knew something was wrong. The tension was in the way she moved, sharp, tight, like she was carrying a weight she didn't want to put down. She didn't even say hello, just tossed the velvet box on the counter with a look on her face that made my gut tighten. "What the hell is this?" I asked, my voice flat. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened the box slowly, like she was letting the moment settle. The bracelet inside gleamed, silver with a diamond accent. It was expensive, far more expensive than anything Raymond had ever given her, even in terms of professional gifts. "Raymond sent it," she said, still staring at the box. "A congratulatory gift for winning the municipal bid." Her words were clipped, but I could hear the underlying frustration. "Congratulatory for what?" I asked, though I already knew. "Winning the bid for the new City Hall project?" She sighed, still holding the bracelet as if it were something toxic. "But that's not what's bothering me." I crossed the kitchen, standing next to her, the box now between us. "What's bothering you then?" Her hand shook slightly as she closed the box and set it aside. "The note that came with it." She paused, her voice lowering. "It said I deserved more beautiful things." And it didn't stop there. I felt my blood simmer. "What else did he say?" Emily rubbed her temples before sitting down at the counter. "He asked about our Caribbean vacation. You know, the one we've been planning for months. Said it sounded nice, but suggested that I could be more appreciated on his yacht, in private." I didn't speak right away. I just stared at her, processing. The anger was starting to boil, but I didn't let it show. I just kept my eyes on her, waiting for her to continue. "I told him I couldn't go," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I said we had plans already, that it wasn't something I was interested in." She met my eyes, and I saw the frustration in them, mixed with something else, something darker. "But he wouldn't let it go. He said I was being difficult, that he only wanted to show me a good time." I shook my head, the disbelief turning into fury. Did you tell him? Did you tell him what I'd do to a guy like that if he crossed the line?" Emily flinched, but then her face softened. "You know I can't do that. You know what it would mean for my career?" "Bullshit," I shot back, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "Your career is worth more than some guy's creepy advances. This isn't just overstepping, Emily. This is harassment." Her eyes fell to the bracelet again. "Raymond's HR team reports to him. Any complaint I've made has led to people being fired. You really want me to take that chance?" I paused. That hit a nerve. I'd seen her fight for her career every damn day, and I knew what she was saying was true. Raymond had power, the kind that came with connections and reputation. Connections he wouldn't hesitate to use to crush her if she made an enemy of him. "I don't care about his connections," I said, voice low. "You deserve better. This shit isn't right, Emily." She was quiet for a moment, letting the silence stretch between us. Then, finally, she looked up. "I can't quit. If I do, he'll make sure no one will hire me. All those years, building this up, I'm not throwing it away because he's an asshole." I sat down next to her, my thoughts racing. There was no way I was going to let Raymond get away with this, no matter how much power he held. "We'll fight him," I said, the words more certain than I felt. "I don't care what he tries. He's not going to scare you into submission." She looked at me, studying my face for a long moment. Finally, she nodded, but it was a hesitant one. "How?" "I've got connections too," I said. "You know that." I leaned in, lowering my voice. "I'm not going to let him ruin your career, Emily. We'll hit him where it hurts, just like he did to you." She didn't say anything for a few beats, and for a moment, I thought she might back out. But then she straightened up, determination flashing in her eyes. "What are we going to do?" I gave a tight-lipped smile, feeling the plan take shape in my mind. "First, we gather evidence, something concrete. We go after him the right way. I have a friend, Tony Morris. He specializes in workplace harassment cases. We'll get him on our side, and we'll expose everything, every word he's ever said." Emily's eyes narrowed. "And then?" "Then," I said, my voice hardening, "we ruin his reputation." She nodded, but her eyes flickered to the bracelet again. "What about this?" she asked, gesturing to the box. "What does it even mean?" "Means he thinks he can buy you," I replied flatly. "But we'll show him that he can't, not this time." She didn't argue. She just stared at the bracelet, then slid it back into its box. "We'll fight back." And that's how it started, Just a bracelet and a note, but it was enough to set everything in motion. We were going after Raymond, and nothing was going to stop us. Not his power, not his arrogance, and certainly not his ability to twist things in his favor. We were going to make sure he didn't just fall, he was going to burn. The text from Raymond pinged on Emily's phone just as we were finishing dinner. She showed it to me, and I felt the all-too-familiar rage stir in my chest again. It was an invitation to a team dinner tomorrow night, but the kicker was in the second part. Everyone else has scheduling conflicts. I glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. "Are you serious?" She sighed and nodded. "I know what he's doing. He's isolating me." I leaned back in my chair, thinking it over. This wasn't just about dinner. Raymond knew exactly what he was doing, and Emily was his target. The problem was, he was treating her like property. She'd spent months putting up with his overbearing behavior, but this was crossing a line. "I'm not letting him get away with this." My words came out colder than I expected, but they were true. Emily exhaled sharply. "I don't want to make a scene. You know how he works. If I push back too hard, I could lose everything." "Then it's time to fight back differently," I said, meeting her eyes. "We'll take him down systematically. If he wants to make this personal, then we make it personal on our terms." She looked at me, uncertainty still lingering, but something else too. Determination. "What do you suggest?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, finding the one name I needed. Tony Morris was a lawyer I'd known from the military days, someone I trusted. He specialized in workplace harassment, and I knew if anyone could help us expose Raymond, it was him. "Let me make a call." I stepped out onto the porch, dialing Tony's number. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Ethan?" His voice boomed, the familiarity instantly making me feel a little lighter. "What's up?" "Need a favor," I said bluntly. "Got a situation with a guy who thinks he can get away with harassment in the workplace. My wife's boss. She's been dealing with this guy for months, but now he's making a big move, and I want to make sure we have the evidence to take him down." Tony was quiet for a moment. "Got it, I know the type. You're going to need explicit proof, something recorded." "That's what I was hoping you'd say," I replied. "I need a strategy to gather the evidence. We can't just go off of our word. We need him to expose himself." "All right, I'll make it happen," Tony said, the confidence in his voice settling the nerves I didn't even realize I had. "Send me what you got. I'll pull together a plan, and we'll nail this bastard." "Thanks, Tony," I said, hanging up. I walked back inside, where Emily was waiting, a quiet but serious look on her face. "What did he say?" I nodded. "He's on board. We need to get Raymond to show his true colors, something on record. We'll use whatever we can." Emily's eyes flickered with a mix of relief and worry. "What does that look like?" I sat down across from her, grabbing a piece of paper and a pen. "Here's the plan. Tomorrow night, when you go to dinner, you're going to wear these." I slid 2 discreet recording devices across the table, a brooch and a pen. They'd look just like accessories, but they'd be streaming everything to a secure server in real time. If Raymond said anything out of line, we'd have the proof we needed. Emily picked up the brooch, turning it over in her fingers. "This is sneaky." "Sometimes you have to fight dirty," I said with a tight smile. "We're not going to leave anything to chance." She sighed, a mixture of fear and resolve in her eyes. "I'm not sure what he's going to say. I'm afraid he'll try something too obvious." "Don't worry," I said, sitting beside her now, my hand resting on hers. "I'll be there if you need me. We're going to keep him talking, keep it professional, even if he doesn't. If he makes a move, you send the checkmate text. I'll be in the truck, waiting." Emily looked at me for a long moment, as if weighing everything she'd been through and everything she was about to face. Finally, she nodded. "Okay, I'll do it. But we need to be sure this works. I don't want to make this worse." I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. "It's going to work. Raymond's not going to know what hit him." We sat there for a while, mapping out every detail. I ran through scenarios in my head, thinking of every possible move Raymond could make. Emily would keep him talking, stick to the company business, avoid any private settings, and never let him corner her. The moment he crossed the line, I'd step in. But it wouldn't just be about confronting him in person. I wanted to make sure we had everything we needed to blow this wide open. Emily wasn't alone in this fight. She'd never be alone again. The night before the dinner, I took some time to prepare. I made sure my truck was ready to go, double-checked the surveillance equipment, and reviewed everything Tony had sent over. It was a long night, but I wasn't sleeping much anyway. There was too much at stake, too much hanging in the balance. By the time Emily was getting dressed for her dinner with Raymond, I was already pacing. The nervous energy felt like static in the air, buzzing and restless. But when I saw her in that sleek black dress, looking both stunning and fierce, something shifted. She wasn't just going to that dinner to survive, she was going there to take control. "Ready?" I asked, meeting her eyes. She nodded, a glint of determination in her gaze. "Ready." And just like that, I knew. This was it. We weren't going to let Raymond win. Not now, not ever. Let's get this done. I sat in my truck across the street from the upscale Italian restaurant, watching Emily through the dimming streetlights. She was getting out of the car, adjusting her coat, her posture as stiff as the icy chill in the air. Raymond had already texted her that everyone else had scheduling conflicts for this so-called team dinner. I knew exactly what that meant. He thought he could corner her, make her feel special, or worse, make her feel like she owed him something. She entered the restaurant, disappearing behind the thick glass doors, and I waited. The feed from her devices buzzed in my pocket, and I hit play. My eyes locked onto the screen as Raymond appeared, already seated at a corner table, champagne flutes glimmering in the soft light of the restaurant. He was alone, and that didn't surprise me. The bastard was setting the stage, and he thought he could manipulate her without consequences. I didn't know what to expect tonight, but I knew it was make or break. I glanced at my watch. Almost 10 minutes had passed. The tension was already tightening in my chest, but I had to stay focused. I couldn't afford to get careless. The mic was streaming live, every word captured, and I would need every second of evidence to ensure we didn't just survive this. Raymond needed to be exposed. The phone buzzed again. Emily's voice came through the truck's speaker, smooth but strained. "I'm here. I'm going in." "Remember," I said, my voice low but sharp, "keep him talking. Stay professional. Don't go anywhere private and don't get cornered." "I know," she replied, her voice steady. "I'll stick to the plan. I'll send the checkmate text if things go sideways." I didn't reply. She knew the drill. I trusted her, but there was a part of me that still felt like I was holding my breath. The restaurant was quiet, aside from the occasional clink of silverware and low hum of conversation. I watched as Raymond greeted her, his hand lingering on her lower back a little too long. She tensed, just enough for me to notice. But she didn't pull away. Not yet. They sat. I adjusted the volume, listening closely to every word they exchanged. At first, it was business. Raymond talking about future projects, his smooth words dripping with false sincerity. Emily nodded, keeping her tone neutral, her voice even. The tension was palpable, but it wasn't yet crossing the line. Then he shifted gears. "I hear the clients couldn't make it tonight," Raymond said, swirling his glass of champagne. "It's just us then." "Too bad." His voice took on a more familiar, predatory edge, and I could hear the way it made Emily's shoulders stiffen. I knew what was coming next. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. "I'm sorry about that," Emily said, trying to deflect. "It happens, but it gives us a chance to talk about your new proposal." Raymond leaned in, his voice dropping a notch. "It does. I've been thinking a lot about your future here, Emily." His words weren't just professional anymore. They were calculated, intentional. "You've got exceptional talents, and I think we can make that future even better." I could hear the slight tremor in her breath. She was trying to stay calm, but I could tell she was starting to recognize the shift, the way he was positioning himself as someone who could control her career. "I appreciate the offer, Raymond," she said, her tone firm, but with an edge I hadn't heard before. "But I'm happy with where I'm at. There's no need to—" "You could do so much more," Raymond interrupted, his hand sliding across the table, closer to her. I could practically feel the room closing in on her, the way his presence seemed to dominate the space. "I think you just need someone to help you reach your potential, in all areas. And that's something I can offer." My eyes narrowed. He was doing it again, shifting from professional to personal, trying to make this about her, about him, about how he could help her in ways she didn't ask for. But it wasn't just a subtle offer. This was a manipulation of power, a power play wrapped in compliments and promises. "Raymond," Emily's voice cut through the tension, sounding more controlled now, but still careful. "I'm not sure I understand what you mean. I'm committed to the work I do here. There's no need for—" He leaned closer, too close. "There's always a need, Emily," he said, his tone darker now. "You deserve more. You deserve to be appreciated. And I can show you what that looks like. Just a little more commitment on your part." The second his hand slid onto her knee, I could feel the heat surge in my chest. Every instinct in me screamed to go in, to confront him right there, to make him regret even thinking about crossing that line. But Emily didn't flinch. She didn't move either. She sat still, the mic catching every word, every breath, and I heard her tap the screen of her phone with a quick, deliberate motion. The checkmate text. I slammed my fist into the truck's steering wheel, my breath steadying, the adrenaline rushing through me. It was time. I opened the door and stepped out into the cold night, the streetlights flickering as I walked toward the entrance of the restaurant. I didn't give myself a moment to hesitate. Emily had already set the trap. Now, I just had to finish it. Inside, Raymond was still smiling, leaning forward, oblivious to what was coming. When he saw me, his smile faltered, his eyes narrowing in recognition. He stood up quickly, a feigned warmth in his expression, but I could see the flicker of uncertainty behind his eyes. He knew. "Ethan," Raymond said, his voice trying to sound casual, but I could hear the edge there. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I just stepped forward, loud enough so everyone could hear. "Raymond," I said, my voice carrying across the quiet room. "I think it's time we had a little conversation about your behavior toward my wife, and your habit of using your position to make advances on employees." The entire restaurant seemed to freeze. Emily sat back, her expression calm, but her eyes met mine, a silent signal of support. Raymond's face turned pale, his attempt at a smile faltering completely. He opened his mouth, probably to come up with some excuse, but Emily wasn't waiting. She pulled the mic from her bag, holding it up so everyone could see. "You see," she said, her voice steady and cold, "Raymond doesn't just offer career advice. He offers things a little more personal." She hit play on her phone, and his words, his attempts to manipulate her, filled the room. The silence that followed was deafening. Raymond's face twisted, his eyes darting around the room, and he finally stood, his chair scraping across the floor. "This is insane," he hissed. "You can't do this." "I already have," I said, stepping closer. "And now, the whole room knows exactly who you are." His eyes flickered with desperation, and I knew he wasn't thinking about what was right anymore. He was thinking about how to get out, how to salvage what little was left of his pride. But it was too late. The damage was done. The restaurant knew. The truth was out. As Raymond was escorted out by the staff, I turned to Emily, my heart still pounding. But something else? Relief? Settling in? We were one step closer to making sure he never did this to anyone else again. And this time, there would be no turning back. The next morning, Emily walked into the HR meeting with Tony, looking calm on the surface, but I could feel the storm swirling beneath. She wasn't just walking into a meeting with her boss, she was walking into the battle for her career. Tony had made it clear we weren't leaving without the proof we needed. This wasn't going to be some quiet backdoor settlement. Raymond had crossed a line, and we were going to make him pay for it, publicly. I sat outside the boardroom, my hands clenched around my phone, feeling every second stretch into hours. The sound of the door opening was like a snap. The quiet chatter from inside immediately stopping as Emily stepped in with Tony at her side. Minutes later, Tony sent me a brief text. "It's starting." I leaned back against the wall, the weight of everything pushing down on me. But there was no turning back now. Raymond was going to be exposed. Inside, Tony played the recordings, each one a nail in Raymond's coffin. I imagined the room's reaction, how it must have been a mix of disbelief, discomfort, and maybe, just maybe, shame for not seeing what was really happening. Emily's voice came through loud and clear in those recordings, calm, controlled, but with a sharp edge that said everything. The silence in the boardroom must have been deafening as Raymond's words echoed through the speakers. The moment he slid his hand onto her knee, the tension in that room must have suffocated them all. It was done. It wasn't just a he said, she said situation anymore. It was evidence, cold, irrefutable. Tony paused the recording just before the confrontation at the restaurant. letting the weight of everything settle. He knew what he was doing. He'd been through this before, but it was different this time. This wasn't just a workplace harassment case. This was about exposing a predator. Emily spoke up. I've given everything to this company. I've worked late nights, weekends, all for this firm. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that what happened is just part of the job. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the undertones of everything she had been holding back. Raymond can't be allowed to manipulate or pressure anyone else into this. The board members shifted uncomfortably, glancing at each other. I could almost hear their thoughts. Were they going to sweep this under the rug? Would they protect Raymond for the sake of the company? But Emily wasn't backing down. Tony spoke next, his voice a calm contrast to the storm we'd set in motion. We've seen enough, and I think the board agrees this goes beyond a simple internal matter. We're prepared to take this public if necessary. The room shifted again. I could almost feel the board members weighing the risk of a public scandal versus trying to appease us quietly. But they knew what Tony knew. This wasn't just about one bad apple. It was about preventing the next one from sinking their teeth into someone else. The legal chief, a stiff older man with sharp glasses, adjusted his glasses, glancing at the board members, then back at Emily. "What are your terms?" he asked, his tone flat but resigned. Emily leaned forward, her back straight, eyes unwavering. "I'm willing to stay, but on my terms. I want a pay increase, a public apology, and a commitment from the board to ensure this doesn't happen again. I want to know that this company will take responsibility for its actions and its employees." There was a long silence, but the board was already starting to agree, nodding in reluctant acknowledgement. The pressure was on them now. The scandal they feared was becoming a reality, and the company was desperate to avoid a public collapse. Tony stood beside Emily, confident but never smug. "I think we can work out the details," he said. "But you should know, Emily isn't the only one. There are other women in this firm who have been silently affected by Raymond's behavior. We're going to make sure the board knows that this is bigger than just one incident." And just like that, the game had changed. Raymond's fate was no longer in his hands. It was in ours. The board members exchanged a few whispered words, clearly scrambling to save face and avoid any further damage. It didn't matter how much money Raymond had or how many connections he'd cultivated. The walls were closing in. The truth had a way of doing that. After the meeting ended, Tony sent me another text. "It's over. They're putting him on leave. We'll see how long he lasts after that." It wasn't just a small victory. It was the start of something bigger. Raymond wasn't going to get away with this. His empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do about it. The door to the boardroom opened, and Emily stepped out. She was calm, but I could see the way her body relaxed, like the weight of the world had just been lifted off her shoulders. The fight wasn't over yet, but we'd just won the first round. I stood up as she walked toward me. The relief was written all over her face. But so was something else, something sharper. "We did it," she said quietly, looking up at me. "We got him." "Yeah," I said, my voice low. "But it's not over. He's just getting started with trying to make things difficult for you." Emily gave a small smile. "Then we'll be ready for it." I pulled her into a quick hug, not caring who saw. This wasn't just about fighting back anymore. It was about rebuilding her career, our lives, everything we had worked for. And no one, especially Raymond, was going to take that from us. "We'll keep fighting," I said, pulling back to look at her. "And we'll win." She nodded, her resolve hardening. "We'll make sure he doesn't get the chance to hurt anyone else." We walked out of the building together, knowing that the next steps would be even harder, but we were ready. We weren't just survivors. We were going to make sure the world knew the truth. Raymond was done. And it felt damn good. Weeks had passed since Raymond was put on leave, but the chaos wasn't over. I should have expected it, but nothing prepared me for the email that showed up in Emily's inbox one night, just as we were getting ready for bed. "Emily," she said, her voice tight, "you need to see this." I crossed the room and leaned over her shoulder as she opened the email. The subject line was blunt. "You think you're safe now?" I skimmed the message, my stomach sinking with every word. It was one of those threats that made your blood run cold. Someone had been watching our house. Photos attached showed our front yard, the street in front of our place, even the back gate. Oh, the message was simple. "I know where you live. If you think this is over, think again. You'll regret crossing me." I wanted to tear into the phone, find whoever sent it, and make them regret it. But Emily just set it down, her hands shaking slightly. He's still trying to control everything, trying to intimidate us into submission. I knew how this worked. This wasn't just a one-off. Raymond was trying to keep himself in our lives, even from the shadows. His ego wouldn't let go. But Emily wasn't going to let him keep haunting her, not anymore. I wasn't going to let him threaten us, not after everything we'd been through. "We'll deal with this," I said, my voice rough with the anger I was trying to contain. "I'll take care of it." Emily nodded, though I could see the unease in her eyes. "I don't want you getting involved, not if it puts you at risk." "I'm not going to sit here and wait for him to escalate," I replied. "He's not just attacking you, he's attacking us, and I'm not letting him get away with it." The next day, I didn't waste any time. I called Diego Ruiz, a former Army Ranger turned private investigator. If there was anyone who could help us get ahead of this, it was him. I explained the situation in as few words as possible, knowing I didn't have to sugarcoat it. Diego didn't care about the details. He cared about getting results. "I'll be on it," he said, after I told him about the threats and the surveillance. "I've got your back, Ethan. I'll put someone on it and we'll track him down. We'll make sure he knows we're not afraid of him." Within hours, Diego had security systems installed in our home. Cameras, motion detectors, the works. He wasn't taking any chances. As much as I wanted to confront Raymond directly, I knew that wasn't the way to handle it. Not yet. I didn't have to wait long for news. A few days later, Diego called. "I've been tracking him," he said. "He's been drinking heavily, calling anyone who will listen. And he's still obsessed with Emily, but here's the thing. He's running scared. People are dropping him left and right." That was the first good news in weeks. I wasn't surprised Raymond was drinking himself into oblivion. His empire was crumbling, and he didn't know how to stop it. "Is he a threat?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "I don't think he's planning anything drastic yet," Diego said. "But he's fixated. The obsession's not healthy, and I've got someone keeping an eye on him. We'll know if he's planning to move against you." Diego kept tabs on Raymond, and we kept our own records. The feeling of constantly being watched, of knowing Raymond still had his eyes on us, was unsettling. But I'd been in worse situations, and I wasn't about to let this go without making sure we were prepared for whatever came next. Then, the countersuit came. Emily stared at the legal papers in her hands, the words blurring as she read. "He's accusing me of seducing him," she said, her voice quiet but full of disbelief. "I'm not sure how he thinks this will play out, but he's trying to make it look like I'm the one who started all this." I sat down next to her, feeling the weight of the situation press down on both of us. "He's desperate, that's all it is. He's grasping for any way to turn the tables." "Is it going to work?" she asked, her eyes meeting mine. I shook my head. "Number, we've got the recordings. He can't lie his way out of this." But there was a part of me that worried. No matter how strong our evidence was, the system wasn't perfect, and Raymond had connections. He still had power, even if it was slipping. "I've already spoken to Tony," I said, trying to calm the storm in her eyes. "This countersuit is just a smokescreen. We're not backing down. We've got everything we need. You just need to stay focused." Emily nodded slowly. "I'm not backing down either." But I knew she was still scared. Not of Raymond, she wasn't afraid of him anymore. But the idea of him continuing to worm his way into our lives, even after everything, was terrifying. "We'll get through this," I said, my hand on hers. "One way or another, Raymond's going to be done, and we'll be free." But it wasn't just Raymond we were fighting anymore. It was everything he stood for, the fear, the manipulation, the way he used his position to destroy lives. And we weren't the only ones he'd hurt. There were others, women who had been pushed aside, dismissed, and silenced. We weren't just fighting for ourselves anymore. We were fighting for them too, for the ones who couldn't fight back. Diego's updates kept coming in, and with every new piece of information, we tightened our grip. But Raymond wasn't done yet. He was still out there, still trying to find a way to claw his way back into control. The question was, how far would he go? How much damage could he do before we stopped him for good? The day after Raymond's countersuit collapsed, Emily and I sat in our living room, the weight of the moment finally sinking in. The fight wasn't over, but it felt like we'd crossed a line, away from defending ourselves and into taking control of our own future. "You know," I said, looking over at her as she flipped through a stack of papers on the table, We've been talking a lot about surviving, but maybe it's time we start thinking about what comes next. She glanced up, the exhaustion still visible in her eyes, but there was something else there now, curiosity. What do you mean? I mean, what if we don't just let this whole nightmare define us? I paused, leaning forward. What if we build something for ourselves, something that isn't tainted by the past, a business, our own consultancy? She raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but hesitant. You want to start a company? Now? Why not? I leaned back in the chair, feeling a new kind of excitement brewing. I've seen what you're capable of, your design work, your relationships with clients. You've got a reputation that people trust, and I have the operations side covered. We could run a company on our own terms, with no one breathing down our necks. No more bullshit from guys like Raymond. Emily sat back, taking it in. It's a big leap, Ethan. You know how hard it's been just getting out from under that firm. I know, I said, nodding. But that's exactly why it's the right time. We don't need Raymond's name, his connections. We have everything we need already. She hesitated, then smiled, the kind of smile I hadn't seen in weeks, a sign that the idea was taking root. You really think we can do this? Absolutely, I replied, feeling a surge of confidence. We'll start small, use your connections, my operations background, and build from there. And with everything we've been through, we'll build something different, something real. The seed was planted, but it wasn't just talk. We had the drive, we had the purpose. Now, we just had to make it happen. By the time Emily left her firm, everything had started to fall into place. We had a team ready to go, a mix of old colleagues of hers who had been pushed out by Raymond and others who shared our vision of creating a work environment that put integrity first. The next step was the money. That's where my uncle came in. He had always been supportive, but when I pitched him the idea, I could see the wheels turning in his head. He wasn't just backing us because we were family, he had his own reasons. Raymond had once tried to sabotage a deal of his, and my uncle saw this as an opportunity to make things right. I'm in, my uncle said, his voice firm. But you better make sure this isn't just some pipe dream. I'm not doing this for charity. We're not asking for charity, I said, the fire in my gut only growing. We're going to build something that lasts. And with that, the foundation was set. We signed the lease on a prime office space downtown, ready to move forward with our new consultancy. We'd still have challenges ahead, fighting against the reputations of people like Raymond, establishing ourselves in an industry that knew how to protect its own, but we didn't care. We were on our own terms now. Over the next few months, things started to come together. Emily's former colleagues, all driven away by Raymond, were eager to join us. And with our strong ethical standing, word spread quickly. We didn't just get clients, we got clients who believed in our approach. The project load grew fast. Mid-sized contracts started to roll in, and soon enough, we had a team of 15, most of them women who had left hostile work environments. They'd been through the same things Emily had, the same things I'd seen her go through, but now they had a place to work where they wouldn't just survive, they would thrive. Look at us, Emily said one afternoon as she glanced around our office, her voice both awed and proud. We're actually doing it. We're making a difference. I watched her, knowing how much this meant to her, to both of us. It's not just the business, I said. It's about showing people that they don't have to put up with the kind of shit Raymond put you through. I know, she replied, and for once we're doing it right. We're not just fighting for ourselves anymore. The sense of freedom in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever felt. We weren't just escaping from one toxic environment. We were creating something new, a place where people didn't just work. They lived by a different standard, a standard where integrity came before profits, where people came first. Raymond's fall was public and quick. Within months, his reputation crumbled. The harassment allegations, along with his fraudulent dealings, were too much for even his most loyal investors to ignore. One by one, they started pulling out, and soon enough, his company was on the verge of collapse. We watched it happen in real time, like the slow unraveling of a bad dream. And with every move Raymond made, we kept moving forward. We built our business the right way, and as his empire fell apart, we gained more clients, more respect, and more power to make real change. We're not just building a business, I said to Emily one evening as we sat in our new office, watching the sun set over the city. We're building a legacy. She smiled, but there was a fierce pride in her eyes now. A legacy built the right way. And just like that, we had turned everything around. We had taken the worst of our experiences, the pain, the threats, the manipulations, and turned it into something we could be proud of. Raymond's attempts to ruin us had only made us stronger. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were winning, and we would keep winning no matter what came next. Months had passed since we'd officially launched our new consultancy, and it was thriving. Contracts were rolling in. Our client base was solid, built on the reputation Emily had earned over years of hard work, now untethered from the weight of Raymond's toxic influence. It felt good to be in control, to know that we were moving forward, not just surviving, but truly building something of our own. But then, of course, Raymond showed up. It was a Wednesday afternoon when he walked into our office, his expensive suit disheveled and his hair unkempt, like he'd just come from a war zone, not an executive boardroom. He tried to look confident, but the bags under his eyes and the unsteady sway in his walk told a different story. He was rattled, cornered, and desperate. Emily and I were in a meeting with a potential client when he barged in, his presence so strong that it felt like the room shrank around us. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. I stood up before she could even respond. "Raymond, what the hell are you doing here?" He turned to me, ignoring my tone. "I'm here to offer Emily something." His gaze shifted to her, and the smugness crept back into his voice. "I've started a new venture, and I want you on board." As an equity partner, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise. An equity partner? This wasn't about business. This was about power, pure and simple. He wasn't asking for her skills. He was asking for her name to clean up his mess, to lend him credibility in a venture that was surely on the brink of collapse. Emily looked at him, unimpressed. "What makes you think I would work with you after everything you put me through?" Raymond gave her a hollow smile, his eyes scanning her as if he was still trying to read her. "I'm not asking you to forget the past, Emily. I'm offering you a chance to rebuild, to grow with me. You'd have a seat at the table, real power." I could see the manipulative words hanging in the air like smoke, and I could feel Emily's resistance pushing against them. She didn't need him. She didn't need anyone like him. "I don't need your offer, Raymond," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. "You're not offering me power. You're offering me a way to clean up your toxic reputation. I'm not interested." He ignored her, leaning forward slightly, his voice low and intense. "You can be more than just a consultant, Emily. I've seen what you can do. You deserve to be at the top, and I'm offering you that chance. Think about it. You could have everything you've ever wanted." His words were like the same old poison. I knew it wasn't about her, it was about him. The need for control, the need to make sure everyone knew he was the one calling the shots. Emily gave him a cool smile. "You're not offering me anything I need, not anymore." Raymond's smile faltered, his temper flaring just enough for me to notice. "You don't get it," he spat, his tone suddenly cold. "This is your chance to—" Before he could finish his sentence, he reached out, grabbing her arm. A flash of rage shot through me, and in one swift motion, I was on my feet, stepping between them. "Let go of her," I said, my voice low but firm. Raymond's grip tightened, a sudden defiance in his eyes. "Stay out of this, Ethan." I grabbed his wrist, forcing it off Emily. His eyes narrowed as I stared him down. "You think you can walk in here, after everything you've done, and just take what's not yours?" I said, my voice barely above a growl. "You've lost, Raymond. This is over." For a moment, I thought he might try to shove me, to escalate things, but he hesitated. Instead, he stood there, glaring, like a wild animal trapped in a corner. "Get out," I said, my voice hard. "Now." Raymond took a step back, his jaw clenched. "You'll regret this," he sneered, his voice filled with venom. "Both of you." "Leave," I repeated, this time louder. "You're not welcome here." His gaze flickered toward Emily, then back to me, and with a final seething look, he turned and walked out, his steps heavy on the hardwood floor. The door slammed shut behind him, and the tension in the room lifted, but only slightly. Emily exhaled, her shoulders slumping as if a weight had been lifted. I stood there for a moment, watching the door like I half expected Raymond to come back and try something else. But he didn't. "He's gone," I said, walking back to her. She nodded, a small but genuine smile appearing on her face. "That was—" I don't know what I expected, but that wasn't it. He's a coward, I said, my voice softer now. He's only trying to intimidate us because he knows he's lost. And you know what? We're not afraid of him anymore. She looked up at me, eyes bright with a mixture of relief and resolve. Number, I'm not. For a second, we both just stood there, the silence of the office settling around us. The weight of everything, the stress, the fear, the struggle, it was all still there. But in that moment, it felt lighter. Raymond's threat was over. He had no more power over us. Let's keep going, I said, offering her my hand. Emily took it, squeezing it firmly. Let's build this. Our way. And that was it. Raymond had lost his grip on us, and now we were moving forward. No more looking over our shoulders, no more living in fear of his next move. We were free. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like we could take it on, together. The charity dinner was supposed to be just another networking event, another opportunity to rub elbows with the right people, and maybe make some lasting connections for our consultancy. We'd been invited by the event organizer, a well-respected industry figure with ties to both the architectural and business communities. It was the kind of evening that should have been all about expansion, new ideas, new partnerships. What it ended up being was Raymond's final stand. I noticed him as soon as we entered the venue. He was sitting at the bar, a drink in hand, his face flushed. He didn't look confident anymore, just sloppy. He was a shell of the man he used to be, still trying to command attention, but it was clear he had nothing left to offer. And as soon as he spotted us, I saw it. That familiar hunger in his eyes. The predator was still there, despite everything that had happened. Emily and I made our way to the main event area, the noise of people chatting and glasses clinking filling the air. I could feel Raymond's eyes following us, like he was stalking us in plain sight. It wasn't long before he staggered toward us, cutting through the crowd with a limp that I hadn't noticed before. His breath was heavy, his movements erratic. He was drunk. "You think you can walk away from me?" Raymond's voice slurred as he came up to us. "You think you've won?" His words were laced with venom, and I could see the desperation in his eyes. It wasn't just a professional defeat anymore. He was wounded, humiliated. Emily stepped forward, her back straight, her expression unreadable. "Raymond, this isn't the time or the place for whatever this is," she said, her tone measured, professional. "You're making a scene." "Making a scene?" Raymond laughed bitterly, his voice rising in volume. "You think you can just sleep your way to success and walk away from me? You think this is over? You owe me, Emily. You owe me everything." The room went silent. It wasn't just us anymore. It was everyone in earshot. The crowd shifted, uncomfortable, some backing away. Emily didn't flinch. She stood tall, the spotlight on her now, and the room could feel the weight of her response. "You're drunk, Raymond, and you're wrong," Emily said, her voice carrying over the silence. "I didn't sleep my way to success. I worked for everything I have. And you're the one who crossed the line. You made it personal, and you tried to destroy my career, my life, with your lies." The tension in the room thickened. I could hear a few gasps. Some people shifted nervously, looking back and forth between Emily and Raymond. He was losing control, and it was happening fast. Raymond's face twisted into a snarl. "You think you can stand there, playing the innocent little victim?" He spat. "You think you're better than me? You're nothing without me." Emily's eyes locked on his, calm and unwavering. "I don't need you, Raymond. Not then, and certainly not now." Before he could say anything else, the event organizer, a man named Richard Adams, stepped forward. "Raymond," he said, his voice calm but firm, "that's enough." Raymond looked at him with confusion, as if he couldn't understand why people weren't rallying behind him. "You can't do this. She's lying. She's using you all." Richard didn't back down. "No, Raymond, we won't tolerate this kind of behavior here. You've been warned before, and you've crossed the line. You're out of here." Raymond's eyes flared with anger, but he didn't have the power to fight back. The security team moved in, surrounding him with a quiet but unmistakable authority. They escorted him out of the room as he stumbled, muttering threats under his breath. As the door closed behind him, the room slowly came back to life, the whispers beginning. I could hear some of the words. "Did you hear that? What was that about?" But Emily didn't seem to care. She turned to me, her face calm, but with something fierce behind her eyes. She wasn't looking at the crowd anymore. She was looking at Raymond's downfall. "That was it, wasn't it?" I said, my voice low, more to myself than to her. "He's finished?" Emily nodded, her expression steady. "It's not over, but that was the tipping point. People saw who he really is tonight." I glanced around, noticing that several prominent industry figures were already moving toward Emily, offering their support, shaking her hand, and nodding in respect. They were watching the end of Raymond's reign unfold, and they were ready to stand with her. As the evening wore on, I couldn't help but feel the weight of everything shifting. It wasn't just the business that had been salvaged, it was something deeper. Raymond had spent years cultivating fear, using his power and connections to manipulate people into submission. But tonight, he had lost that power. His attempts to destroy Emily had only made her stronger. Emily turned to me, a quiet smile on her face. "It's done. He's done." "We're done too," I said, smiling back. This was the last chapter in the story. Now, we write our own. The next few days were a whirlwind. Raymond's downfall was swift after that public confrontation. His company's investors scrambled to cover their tracks, and an audit uncovered a series of financial discrepancies. His once loyal employees began to speak out, and within a week, Raymond was arrested, facing multiple charges. His reputation crumbled, and his empire was no more. But for Emily and me, the fight had always been about something bigger than Raymond. It was about creating a space where people didn't have to fear losing their dignity for the sake of a paycheck, where women like Emily could thrive without having to endure harassment, manipulation, or fear of retribution. It wasn't just a victory for us, it was a victory for everyone who had ever been silenced, for everyone who had ever been made to feel like they didn't belong, and we were just getting started. As the months passed, Emily expanded our mentorship foundation for women facing workplace harassment. We helped dozens of women find new opportunities, new beginnings, and with every person we helped, we made sure Raymond's influence didn't reach them. We had made it through the storm, and now we could finally look ahead, knowing we had the strength to keep going, stronger, freer, and more determined than ever. Raymond had thought he could break us, but we were still standing, and we would keep standing, forever free of him. Months later, I sat on the back porch with Emily, a cup of coffee in my hands, watching the sun dip lower in the sky. The warmth of the afternoon was slowly fading, the air thickening with the promise of evening, but there was a calm between us, a quiet, hard-earned peace. Emily sat beside me, her own mug resting on her lap, her eyes distant but not lost. She was reflecting, I knew, on everything we'd been through. I was doing the same. "How did we get here?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. She wasn't asking out of confusion. It was more like she was taking stock, recognizing that we had moved from survival mode to something else entirely, something better. "We fought," I said simply. "We fought when we didn't think we had it in us, and we kept fighting, even when we were exhausted." She smiled, but it was the kind of smile that held weight, a smile that carried both pride and something like relief. "It's been a long road." "Too long," I replied, "but it was worth it." She looked around at the small but growing space we had built. The backyard, with its modest garden, the small office we rented downtown, and the team we had been slowly assembling. Things weren't perfect, but they were ours. "Look at everything we've built," Emily said, gesturing to the surroundings. "I never thought I'd be here, after everything with Raymond, but now it feels like the future is ours." I nodded. "It is. And the best part is, we didn't have to compromise our values to get here. We did it the right way." Our consultancy was thriving. The 15 of us, mostly women who'd left toxic environments in search of something better, now filled our office. It wasn't just a place of business anymore. It was a safe space where people could rebuild. We were creating something new, something stronger than the old systems that had tried to break us. We had built a foundation on integrity, not power, and it was paying off. "Remember when we were just hoping we could survive through the year?" I said with a laugh. "Look at us now," Emily chuckled. "I know, it feels surreal, but we're here, and we're making it work." She paused, taking a sip of her coffee, and I could see her processing everything. I knew she was thinking about the women we'd helped, about the women we still planned to help. Emily had always believed in giving others the opportunities she hadn't had, and now, with our foundation, we were doing just that. Our mentorship program was growing faster than I'd anticipated. We'd already helped dozens of women leave abusive workplaces, giving them not just jobs, but a sense of purpose and dignity. In a few short months, we'd built a community, not just a business, but a movement. If we hadn't fought back, Emily said, almost to herself, Raymond would still be preying on people. He'd still be at the top, doing what he did to me, to all of us. But we stopped him. And now we're turning all of that pain into something good. Her words were a quiet affirmation. She knew, like I did, that without the fight, we wouldn't be here. Without standing up to Raymond, without taking the ugly truth to the world, we would still be on the run, living in fear of the next move he'd make. I looked at her, a sense of pride swelling in my chest. You've done more than just survive. You've changed everything. For you, for us, for the people who need to see that there's a way out. Emily smiled, her eyes softening as she looked out over the yard, the evening sunlight casting long shadows across the grass. We've created something that's bigger than just us, and that's the best part. It's not just about fighting back anymore. It's about showing people they don't have to be afraid. I reached out, taking her hand, the weight of everything we'd been through pressing down on me, but in the best way. We had fought, we had won, and now we had built a future. Together. You're right, I said, and we're just getting started. There's more to come. We're stronger now, and we're busier than ever. She squeezed my hand, her grip firm. And finally free of him. I leaned back, the sky darkening around us, and let the moment settle. There was a time when I thought the world was against us, but now I knew the truth. The world was just waiting for us to take control. We had done that. We had built something that would last. The future was ours, and for the first time in a long time, I knew we were going to be okay. And that was enough.